Okay. Now I would request Qasim Masumi, who is from Jawaharlal Nehru University, to present his paper. His paper name is uh, Double Burden Faced by the Elderly Homeless, a case study of Delhi. So, Qasim Masumi, it's over to you.
Yeah, yeah. Good evening, everyone. Let me just turn on my video. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, perfectly.
Okay. So my name is Qasim Masumi. I'm a research scholar at Jawaharlal Nehru University. My work has intensively been on elderly. So with this, I would just like to introduce you to my topic, which is elderly homeless and their double burden, which I will be talking about. So basically, here, double burden, which I'm trying to refer, is on how elderly is being double burden. First, that by the introduction of my topic only, you can see it. I'm talking about the homeless elderly. So homeless elderly being homeless, and the second burden will be the elderly who is facing. Hello, am I audible? Hello, some noise
Yes, yes,
congestion.
yes, 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 you can.
Okay, thank you. So the first burden which I'll be talking about is the homelessness of an elderly, and the second burden will be referring as their process of aging, like elderly aging towards and in the end at the point of being at their deathbed. So this is it, and the rationale behind taking this study was like currently as per the Helpage India report 2018, it has been seen that 60% of A plus age is in by 2012 is 60%. 60 plus, sorry, let me just get the data right. Yeah, 8% of the population was recorded 60 plus age in 2011, and it is also estimated to grow by 12.5% by 2026. And also there has been noticed in the report that 25% of elderly experienced abuse, 22% exploited financially, 12% suffered physical abuse. And Delhi, the study which has been held in Delhi, and the reason is because Delhi ranks among fifth top cities in elderly abuse. This was the report which was published by Helpage India in 2018. And here I would like to first define elderly, which definition has been taken from National Policy of Older Person. A person who has attained 60 years of age or above, the society mostly attributes the value of honor and obedience to the elderly person. So this is the definition which is given by the just a sec, National Policy of Older Person. So I would just like to go ahead with my paper. So also I'll describe about different uh, forums on which elderly topics have been discussed, like what has Universal Declaration of Human Rights has to say on it, and different NGOs like Helpage and Asha Adhikar comes in. So yeah, there I'll start my presentation now. Life with dignity is a fundamental right of every individual internationally. Universal Declaration of Human Rights recognizes it. The Indian Constitution in its Article 21 guarantees the right to live, which is interpreted as right to life with dignity. The article is a basic fundamental right which cannot be evoked even when in an emergency. Despite the international commitment and constitutional guarantee, the right to a dignified life is still a dream of vast society's section. To exercise the fundamental right, every person must have access to food, clothing, shelter, health facilities, education, etc. Also, this right includes within itself a person inalienable rights against discrimination and oppression. Home is a home, that is proper housing, is an essential requirement needed for dignified life. Home sweet home is not just a material requirement, but it is also required for emotional and psychological well-being. Home protects us from summer, winter, and rain. It provides us a sense of security. It gives us a sense of privacy. Proper housing has a toilet, bathroom, kitchen, etc. It gives us choices to select our comfort zone. It provides us hygiene and protects us from multiple disease. In short, there can be no dignified life for the homeless. The homeless is a very severe threat to the person's right to a dignity life, to a dignified life. Globally, Universal Declaration of Health and Human Rights recognizes homeless person as those who do not live in a regular residence due to lack of proper housing, safety measures, and availability. The statement from the United Nations Economic and Social Council underlines the multiple dimensions when it says the right to adequate housing is about the security of term affordability, access to services, and cultural competence. It is about protection from actual eviction and displacement, fighting homeless poverty and exclusion. India defines homeless as those who do not live in census houses but rather stay on pavement, roadside, railways, platform, staircases, temples, street pipes, or other open spaces. Homeless is Homeless is a curse. Millions of people, however, it is much more troublesome for the elderly people. Elderly people are even more vulnerable among the homeless. Neither do they have physical strength to earn their bread or strong immunity to resist the disease. Old age is a life phase where a person needs special care and attention, more comfort zone. Further, they gradually become weaker and weaker, ultimately moving to death. Thus, homeless elderly is one of the most vulnerable sections of society. Homelessness itself implies that these sections are one of the most deprived areas also. They constitute the lower section of society. Thus, homeless elderly are those poor people who are mostly without proper nutrition, prone to chronic disease, but without a medical facility, without any privacy, sense of security, and dignity. These homeless elderly do not even have an identity. An identity card issued by the state tells us the residence of the person. A residence is an inalienable part of an identity of a citizen. In absence of the residence, even a person is not adequately recognized by the Indian state. In case of death of these elderly homeless, their last rituals are also not appropriately performed. This constitute the unidentified bodies. Thus, they neither have a dignified life nor have a dignified death. It is also the state, but the people do not even recognize these elderly homeless. Many scholars have rightly pointed out that society consciously does not want to accept homeless, which they can regularly see on the streets. This mere denial recognition throws them out of the public discourse. The, Thus, neither these vulnerable elderly homeless can themselves assert their rights or form any pressure on the state, nor the government wants to recognize their rights as dignified citizens of the country. Also, society and scholars at large do not recognize their deprivation and vulnerability. Hence, it becomes challenging even to start a constructive and fruitful dialogue on the homeless elderly. However, though very limited, some appreciable initiatives were taken by both the Indian state and some voluntary organizations like Helpage India and Asha Adhikar Abhiyan. The Indian government has undertaken some program for the homeless elderly under the Central Sector Scheme of Integrated Program for Older Persons, which is IPOP, implemented by the Ministry of Social Justice Empowerment since 1992. Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act 2007 is enacted to prevent children and relatives from abandoning parents and senior citizens. Department of State's welfare of some state government are also taking some steps to better the elderly homeless. concerns and initiatives of voluntary organizations are still more palpable. They are working in a much more comprehensive manner. Helpage India works for the elderly and in the course recognizes the unique need of homeless elderly. Asha Adhikar Abhiyan is the second organization, works for the homeless and in the time acknowledges the double burden and vulnerability of the homeless elderly. Asha Adhikar Abhiyan has gone much ahead for the cause of homeless elderly. It raised their questions, took some severe initiatives, and attempted to present the vulnerability of double burden homeless elderly in hello in the form of yeah hello
Yes, carry on, carry on.
okay. So, yeah. So, Shadikar, in the form of which has given a proper understanding to their working experience of the homeless elderly. Thus, they have tried to bring the issues of homeless elderly into the public discourse. It also formed a platform named Varisht Nagarik Manch, which is democratically elected by the homeless elderly to raise their causes. However, the state and society general apathy towards the homeless is general and homeless elderly remains to continue. The question of homeless must be understood comprehensively. A proper policy for housing for all must be adopted. Simultaneously, the homeless specific problems must be recognized, and special provisions for vulnerable community must be made. Since these homeless people are one of the most deprived and marginalized section of the society, they must be prioritized social welfare with the social welfare schemes. They must be beneficiaries of ration, medical, pension, housing, and other projects. The double burden of homeless elderly and their vulnerability with the homeless must also be recognized, and their issues should be addressing without delay. Their old age compounded with the homeless should be taken into consideration and in account. The reason for the homeless should also be considered, and hence an acceptable policy should be evolved. For example, the homeless on an elderly who was homeless since childhood and is now growing old is a different problem. Until and unless the issue of homeless is not addressed comprehensively, their problems could not be solved. However, suppose the reason of their homelessness is that they are abandoned in case of the maintenance and welfare of parents and society. Citizen Act 2007 should be strictly implemented, and also uh, I'm sorry, Maintenance and Welfare of the Parents and Senior Citizen Act 2007 should strictly be implemented. Also, there should be awareness program to sensitize society. Only a concerned and sensitive community can create the societal pressure required to check such abandoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Qasim Masumi. This is a very well researched paper. So thank you. So I would request uh, next paper presenter, Mr. Sumit Mondol, who is from Central University of Gujarat. So Sumit Mondol, please present your paper. And
Audible?
yes, and I would request all the participants to, if you have any question, write in the chat box and write the name of the speaker whom you want to ask the question. Thank you.
Hassan, we need to complete the question answer session now. So
Yes.
I would
You
like
can.
to ask the chair to comment on this lecture.
Okay, thank you, Abid. It has been wonderful listening to the presenter. And yes, he has pointed to a very uh, important issue, relating to the homeless elderly citizens. Now, obviously, this is one of the pressing issues, and they are, in a sense, a double victims. Uh, so, uh, taking into the consideration the important points that he has made in his paper regarding the need of the society to take care of uh, the elderly homeless people. I mean, I would now request the audience here, the participants here, if they have any question, to come forward with them. And yeah, we may take the questions and Qasim's answer to that. And let us then go forward to the next presenter. Thank you, Qasim, for your brief but wonderful presentation about the situation that actually needs our attention regarding the elderly population, elderly homeless population in particular.
Thank you.
Okay, so questions, please.
There is a question from Taushik Mondon. So, Taushik, please ask your question.
Yes, sir. May I audible?
Hello, Tausif.
I have a question to Qasim Masumi, sir.
Or is this
Yes,
Qasim
sir.
Masumi? No, sir, nothing.
Good evening, sir.
Oh, please, no,
So
sir.
my question.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Hello, hello. Sir, my question is, what is the next step to the homeless people of the government, or there is any step the government take some step for the homeless
See,
people?
basically, I have,
The governmental step.
I did not get your question completely, but yeah, I am thinking and assuming that you have been asking the steps of government which has been taken in respect for the elderly homeless. So basically, when I was working in Bihar, Patna,
Yes, sir.
okay,
Yes,
okay. So when I was working in Bihar, Patna, there was this organization, international organization, UNFPA, which was working for the elderly there, and so there are which was also run by the Patna Municipal Corporation. So in that context, government has taken the steps, not very very properly, I would say. And think about an elderly who is at his home, and or he's not living in a shelter home, also is asked to travel 1 kilometer away from his home to get himself food. In the case of elderly, it is because of his aging process, it becomes very difficult for an elderly to go to travel 1 kilometer twice a day just to have a meal. So the government initiatives are not well planned, I would say, and the steps during this pandemic which has been taken for the elderly is just negligible, which is the complete, I would say, the state has avoided the to understand the circumstances which is faced by the elderly homeless. And see, even if you see the policies which are being made is taken as a whole and can be seen through the lens of youth, but it can but I would say there is no consideration of understanding the elderly, how they perceive those policy. For example, just I said, for me or you, traveling for 1 kilometer for food would be fine, but what about the elderly? At this point, at this juncture, when we see it in Delhi, it is like around 3 degrees at night. The temperature is 3 degree at night. How do you expect elderly person who is homeless to travel 1 kilometer to the Ran Basera or nearby shelter home and get food, get his food? So all these process and all this failure, I would say, I would address it as a failure of government, which is quite depressing. in case of elderly. I hope I have answered your question.
Okay, next question from Menul
Thank you, sir.
বিশ্বাস. And his question uh, is this study primary based? uh, I think he is asking your study based on primary and qualitative study. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry, sorry. My bad. Little bit like just the before speaker said, this division and partition of. I'm very technically challenged and partition of this digitalization. So yeah, I would say my study is qualitative in nature, and also it is secondary reviewed. So it's not the primary data which I have put in, but I have reviewed different articles, journals, work of NGOs, and that is how I have come to such conclusions. And I would like to like also there are many few of my unresearched work and like also my experiences which I have put in. So that's how I have wrote this paper down.
Okay, thank you. The last question from Murshid Alam. Murshid Alam, please ask your question.
Sir, hello. Can you hear
Hello.
me,
Yes,
sir?
yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Actually, my question is that these are really serious issue. Actually, I also pondered over that. But what's the problem is actually government doesn't prioritize these kind of issues, or we can't represent that seriously. What's the actual issue is?
See, it's both ways, I would say, but I would help. I will hold the government more responsible for this. They are the one who is supposed to take care of its citizens. But current government is in different mood. They are in the very much in their mood of dividing the states and classifying citizens as first class citizen and second class citizens. Elderly perspective is not at all there in their mind. They are not at all talking about this major crisis of elderly which is faced by the citizens of this country. This this particular government is just a particularly state government I would like to criticize, and I would say that it's not doing its job properly. There is, and from our end, from the citizens perspective, I would also like to critique that our role has also been deteriorated with time. India is a state which is known for its respect towards the elderly. But in the recent studies where I quoted Helpage India also, I would say that 24% of 24% elderly abuse is happening in the state right now, which is a major concern. So from our end also, things are not being done properly, and definitely this government is to doing things in God knows in which direction and where they're leading this country to. So yeah, huge disappointment at the end of the government.
Hello.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Hello. Can I ask a question, please?
yes, please.
Yes, as you said that government failure to take care of the old age or elderly
Yes,
people, but
yes.
how do you comment on that in this market oriented economy or liberal economy, what could be the role of citizen or caretaker?
The what will be the role of?
Citizen or caretaker or maybe family members, all the time we are raising our finger at government and government failure, but whereas
Yes.
the system itself become a liberal country or kind of market oriented, and all the stakeholder, all the actors have equal roles, so why all the time pointed at government?
I suppose we have elected a government for such critical issues. Also, but answering to your question, I would say that our functioning has also been deteriorated. Last, I just answered this in my previous question only, that our functioning has also been deteriorated as a citizen, because we are fighting among ourselves, and there is no particular idea and ideologies and the things which needs to be followed in a particular direction. Our elderly is facing a crisis which is also very much ignored by the citizens. I would say, like, if, for example, if I have a parent at my house, my responsibility is just not to get them food. My responsibility is to take care of their well-being, mentally, socially, physically, and economically also. So at that part, I would say state though has its own failures, but as a citizens, we also are now failing to address and understand our elderly.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Uh, so it's over to chair. So we're running out of time. So, Dr. Monalisa, over to you.
একটা কোয়েশ্চেন ছিল।
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Qasim. I mean, and thank you.